Yo, you already know who it is. It's your boy Toke with the XD Podcast with another deep take. This one's another one on generational wealth. It's not a compilation. This would be a reactionary video. Recently, Ryan Leslie did an interview on Forbes. And within that interview, he talked about generational wealth, which is the very topic of this. So I'm going to do my key breakdowns of that entire interview. I'm going to do my cuts and everything like that so you don't get the full interview. To watch that full interview, make sure y'all go down in the description and we'll take it from there, dog. Let's get this thing going.
Trying to make some money, save some money, make our money, make some money. And you have a wealth plan, which is what, a financial literacy club?
Yes.
What gave you the idea to create
It's a
this?
club, you know. I feel as though really when we grow up, we are taught almost culturally that finances are, and there's actually a moniker for it, personal finance, right? And so we are caught in between, should we share what's happening with our finances? Should we keep it a secret? I know for me growing up, it was, hey, you don't talk about how much you make. You don't talk about how much you have invested, how much you have saved. What I found though is that when you can make the journey a collective journey, the pathway to, let's call it understanding of what's actually happening, the ability to have a sounding board where you have a community of folks that are concerned and have some care and consideration for your financial well-being, this can really make a massive difference in the achievement of, let's call it exponential compounding. So that's really what the premise of Wealth Plan was all about, is the fact that when I decided I wanted to learn finances, I wanted to not rent a Bruce Lee movie and teach myself karate. I wanted to learn directly from someone who actually did it the right way. And so Wealth Plan is exactly that. It allows me to, based on what I've been able to achieve, now be able to give back in a way that allows me to be a one-on-one mentor and hopefully make an impact that's not just going to be for the person I'm mentoring, but for a family, for a generation as well.
So speaking of generations, how can someone who, we don't know generational wealth, how can they get to that point?
Yeah. To get to generational wealth, so much has been said about it, right? It's such a simple concept. It's the eighth wonder of the world. It is compounding. And you can start. It's really just about starting.
As you can already see, it's already not aligned with what I was saying for generational wealth, but he is talking about knowledge a little bit, but more so he's talking about finances. But you can piggyback most of what's being discussed here into your own life. Like I said, you have to start somewhere. The most important thing is to start. If you want to learn something, the most important thing is to start it. Just do it. Just do it. See if you actually like it. I've switched my talents up multiple times. I tried DJing. I didn't like DJing. I tried doing sound engineering. Didn't like doing sound engineering. It was way too more complicated. I'm doing video editing. It's very simple to me. I'm doing graphic design. It's very simple to me. But for somebody else, it may not be the same. You have to start to find what is good for you. And then you pass that knowledge down to see if it's good for your kids. It may not be. But as long as they have that knowledge, they have that exposure, that's generational wealth when you started. And that's where he's also talking about financial literacy. We don't have that in the black community. Even though we have a lot of black accountants, people in the finance sector that's doing stock markets and this, that, and the third, like a Discord servers. I've been in plenty of Discord servers with people that's in finance. Some people that believe in crypto, others that are wholly against it. About finding the knowledge and you sticking with it and you growing that way. And as he also stated in there, you start small. Don't expect to be big. There's a lot of people in these YouTube streets or just in the world in general that portray themselves as bigger when they're really not. They're just average, just like you and I. Don't always have to take that advice.
What would you tell someone who, I don't know, they 70 years old, they're doing this, they got all that time.
Yes.
What would you tell that person?
So you're saying someone who's starting much later.
Much later.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, the there really is no difference to the strategy, right?
Okay.
Because obviously starting at 70 is much later than, let's say, someone learning at 24 or 25, right? The vehicles into which you can invest remain the same. So the S&P 500 has been around for 70 years. You have to get started. They say the best time to start investing.
All right, let's stop it there again. So that's a very important question what she asked him. She asked him, what would you say to those that are older in age, i.e. 70 years, people that are senior citizens? Me personally, what I would tell them, I wouldn't tell them anything. They're my elders. I will be the one asking them questions. And that's where kind of like the black community lacks. We're not asking our elders these questions, or we're not respecting them enough to respect the answer that they give us. Because we may not like the answer. Just think about that for a second. I know my pops has a wealth of knowledge. I know my mom has a wealth of knowledge. I know my uncles, my aunties, their friends, whatever. They all have a wealth of knowledge that I can drive out of it. But it's my lack of being social, I would say. I don't ask those questions. And when I do ask those questions, I find myself intrigued. I really do. I find myself intrigued. Like, let's say an example. When you find out your family history, like, it's things that you don't realize happened in those time periods that you kind of take for granted now, because you don't feel you experience it, but you kind of do. They've been around the block, man. And part of generational wealth is not repeating what happened in the past. And if your elders have been through it, we should learn from it. You know what I'm saying? It's as simple as that. But the biggest thing here is, like I said, it's knowledge, it's learning. I'm gonna keep hitting on that. I'm gonna harp on it. You gotta learn. Speak to your fathers. Speak to your grandparents if you still got them. Speak to your great grandparents if you still got them. Because I know a lot of y'all got 60-year-old great grandparents. That's not a shot. That's not a shot. I know some people gonna say that's a shot. That ain't a shot at all. All right, let's keep it rocking.
Investing was 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
Yeah. Okay, so eliminating losses. If there's a way to do that, why isn't everybody doing it?
I would say, amongst the folks that are actually a part of a Wealth Plan Club, really the reasons that I hear for folks who haven't done it is because they were never introduced to this concept. And even though the concepts are very, very simple, they require no more than middle school math to understand. If we look at our educational journey, from the time we're in middle school to when we get to high school to when we get to college, most of our education and training is really focused on making us dependent on the capitalist system in which we live. Living paycheck to paycheck, deciding that we want to go out and actually, go.
So, could you talk about that? I want to know, like,
an Apple, because, go take on a large amount of debt, which is collateralized. Really the reasons that I hear for folks who haven't done it is because they were never introduced to this concept. And even though the concepts are very, very simple, they require no more than middle school math to understand. If we look at our educational journey, from the time we're in middle school to when we get to high school to when we get to college, most of our education and training is really focused on making us dependent on the capitalist system in which we live. Living paycheck to paycheck, deciding that we want to go out and actually, go take on a large amount of debt, which is collateralized by.
So, interesting fact, was it 65% of Americans live check to check? And that's including your millionaires, your six-figure dudes or women, whoever. They all live in check to check. Why they live in check to check? They got mortgages, they got car payments, they got overdrafts on their banking accounts, they got savings accounts. Don't get me started with that. They got their credit cards maxed out. There's a whole bunch of different things. They buy their Amazon carts full, their Temu accounts full. This splurging. This is part of the financial literacy that he's talking about. Exposure. We're exposed to a capitalist society where we have to spend. We have to spend. Why is that? And that's why I didn't want to focus too much on finance, because that's where do you start? Like you said, where do you start? You start at school. Our schools, we don't even really know a history like that anymore. The English scores have dropped. The math scores have dropped. The science, every score around the board has really dropped. But we have only certain schools focusing on STEM. Not all of them. Isn't that very important? Isn't that where our society is heading right now? AI, our technology advancements. We got chip factories being built down in Texas right now. Who's gonna man those? More robots? Who's gonna work on those robots? What happens when the Chrysler factory shut down? This knowledge that your parents can be passing down, or you can be doing yourself by watching the news or being on these YouTube streets. You know what I'm saying? You gotta expose yourself to different things. Get out of your bubble. Go meet some other people. Go to another country. Go to another state. Go to another city. Go across the street. It's simple like that, man. You gotta expose yourself. It starts somewhere. You never know what you would like until you get out there and explore. Do not be scared to. And that's like the biggest highlight here. Stop being scared to socialize. The virus, the pandemic is over. Get out here and socialize with people. Learn what they like. Learn what they don't like. Why don't they like it? Why do they like it? That's part of generational wealth. Building yourself up so you can pass it down to the next generation. Hey son, this is what I learned. Based off of my journeys, I recommend you do this. But if you don't, hey man, I'm just giving you the warning. Don't repeat the history. Let's keep it right.
Buy a home, the American dream. The difference, though, is when you look at stories of folks that have really made it, and I'm talking about multi-billionaire status, they got started very early, and they got started in a different way. And what they did was actual real ownership without having to leverage debt to acquire the ownership. What does that mean? If you've got $100,000, you can actually put $100,000 down on, let's say, a $400,000 house, right? You're actually taking on $300,000 in debt. On the flip side, if you have $100,000 and you invest it, let's say, in Apple, this isn't financial advice, but if you were to invest that $100,000 in Apple, the difference there is based on the actual brokerage system that we have in the United States. Not only do you actually own outright the piece of the business that you bought when you spent $100,000 on Apple, the brokerage system will actually allow you to be your own bank, which means that if you've got $100,000 in Apple, because it's been such a well-performing company, the brokers will actually allow you to borrow against that asset, and it's collateralized by the asset. So in some cases, I've worked with folks who have got $100,000 in Apple, but they might need, $70,000 to start a business. Well, they're able to actually leverage $50,000 of that $100,000, start the business, and pay themselves back. All the while, they never had to sell any of their Apple stock. So while they spent a year, 2 years, 3 years developing that business, growing that $50,000 investment, hopefully into $250,000, Apple stock that they own for that $100,000 is working in the background over those 3 years as well. And if we look at just what's happened this year in Apple stock, it has actually achieved new all-time highs. And that is really the byproduct of excellent leadership, excellent profit.
So all he's explaining right now is compound interest. The reason why you shouldn't have a savings account. The reason why a brokerage account is a lot more effective. Why is that? When you put your money into a bank account, the bank is going to use your money to make themselves more money to pay off their debtors or their investors. But if you put your money into a brokerage account, it's the same money. So let's say you had $1,000 in your bank account versus $1,000 in your brokerage account. Put that $1,000 in your brokerage account into different stocks, that money is going to build and build and build. You put it over here in this bank account, it's going to more than likely just sit there. It's not going to rise with inflation, which is going above 3% now each year. It's going to stay there, stagnant. You had $1,000, it's going to stay. Is using that $1,000 that you put into that bank account to go buy CDs, to go buy bonds, so that way they can pay the people in their brokerage accounts that support their business. You got to think about it a little bit better than that. If you want an emergency funds account, it's not financial advice, I gotta say that. But if you want an emergency fund account, put it in the brokerage account. Park your money where it's gonna work for you. That's what it's saying. But then again, it's the same thing. You can relate it to your life in general. How is anything that you're going to do be beneficial to you in the long term? Why are you learning what you're learning? You have to answer these questions whenever you're going through something. So that way you can get the results that you deem necessary. We don't just do things just to do things. It doesn't work like that. That doesn't make sense. It's a waste of time. Your time is precious. Utilize it correctly.
So in your opinion, what's one thing that sets a good investor from a great investor apart?
Yeah, so a good investor from a great investor. I know there's so much that's been written about this, but I would say that it's really just about automating and removing emotion from your investment decisions. I would say that really there are three human tendencies that I come across in working with the folks that come to join our Wealth Plan Club, and that's fear, greed, and ego, right? So fear, very, very simple. There's two sides of the coin. Fear of missing out. Oh my goodness, I see, and let's go back to Apple stock. It's at all-time highs. Oh my gosh, I need to buy right now. And there is, let's call it a disconnect about how the stock market works. When a company is running up, it doesn't mean that it's always just going to be a straight line up. There will be times where investors may take some profits off the table. So fear of missing out may cause an investor to overpay for an investment, right? Because they're chasing, right, a concept or an idea. But also fear of losing money. So maybe because of their fear of missing out, they might buy a company at 300 or 400 a share, and that company might come all the way down to 250 or 225. And that fear of losing money will cause them to sell, as opposed to actually allowing the company the time to actually grow and develop as a great investment. So fear, greed, which kind of drives the American capitalist system in general. And so our desire to retire earlier, to make more money faster, that sort of feeds into this frenzy in some cases that we may find in the markets, and then also ego.
He makes a great point there. Fear. I recently started reading the 50 Cent book, Hustle Smarter, Hustle Harder, or it's the other way around, one of the two. But in there, one of his key takeaways coming up was becoming fearless. Becoming fearless. And he became fearless after his mom died, I want to say. But you're going to take risks. It's part of the territory. If you're going to start something, things are going to come up. Nothing comes easy. Success does not come easy. And it does not happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take years. It could take a decade. But you have to stay consistent. You have to keep doing what you're doing. A few years ago, I started a print business. I was making clothes, promotionals, things of that nature. 2 years in, I'm not making that much money, but I'm still doing it. I'm starting to build my clientele more and more. I'm starting to see the fruits of that labor. I stuck to it. I learned the craft. I'm finding success in it. I'm growing at the pace I feel is very desirable. Actually, a little bit better. Just find something, expose yourself to it, learn the craft, and you will realize that it's not going to happen overnight. That's the biggest thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It can take you a decade. Most people don't become an expert in their craft until like 10 years, but it depends on the job. That's very subjective. But for the average person, it takes 10 years to be a master in your field.
Gonna look like.
So that sounds like skills-based learning. That's a skill, learning how to do a prompt.
Yeah.
And I know you're a Harvard man and you're all about education, but what do you think the value of a college degree will be in the near future?
For me, when I think about my time at Harvard, man, some of the buddies that I have there, my buddy Tosh.
Man, before you even answer, what's going to be the value of a college degree? The same. It just depends on what degree you get. If you got a degree in marketing, you got AI for that. If you got a degree in media, you got AI for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just depends on what your degree in. AI isn't going to replace the engineers. It's not going to replace your scientists. Why? They're the ones that build this stuff. They're not going to sell themselves out of a job. Well, scientists maybe. Why? Because that's literally what science is. You build on top of a theory and you push as far as you can to someone tell you you can't. That's just how science is. There are going to be degrees that are going to get phased out. It's your responsibility to figure out which of those degrees are going to be effective.
Josh Clayton, my boy Mark Price, my brothers Diallo and Bashir, folks that I met during Harvard, my other buddy Lex. These are all folks or people that I met through colleagues at Harvard. One of my longtime partners, Rashid Richmond, his sister was at school with me, his sister Afra. I believe that being in that ecosystem with high performance critical thinkers is the true value of that college experience. So anyone that you ask, whether they've gone to Cornell or whether they've gone to USC, whether they've gone like my sister at Cal Berkeley, there are relationships that are built there in the formative years of our lives where you find potential business partners, potential collaborators, lifetime and lifelong friends. And I believe that that's really sort of a priceless exchange for the tuition that we pay. Now, the other reason why I'm never really worried about tuition is because when you can master what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, you can take a very small amount of capital and over time compound that capital to cover whatever expenses you may have accrued in student loan debt, etc. And I think a lot of what I've found is people necessarily either A, just don't want to learn it, B, they have maybe somebody in their family lost some money in the stock market and says, I don't want to touch that at all. But what we find is that being uninvested is actually losing you money, right? Because all of the headlines, at least the current headlines, are very, very focused around inflation. The cost of goods and services are going higher. So that means that a dollar today is actually really retains less purchasing power. So you've got to find some way to crack the whip on that money and make it do some somersaults and make it work for you. Otherwise, what you'll find is the same $10 that you wanted to spend on a quick run to one of the bodegas uptown, that $10 is buying you less and less and less. So that means that you need to make sure that whether it's with our Wealth Plan Club or just on your own or
once again, he's picking back up what I mentioned earlier about inflation. Where you park the money matters. If you making less than $20,000 a year or something like that, I get it. You don't feel you have money to invest. Like I said, this ain't financial advice either. But we talking about generational wealth. It's hard to avoid finances, so I get it. But let me give you some knowledge, right? It's free to start a brokerage account. They don't charge for a brokerage account, whether it's Robinhood, Webull, my favorite, Charles Schwab. You start that account, park some money in there, figure out where you want to dish it out to. It could be an ETF, it could be a stock. Start building that little wealth that that's where it starts at. If you want some financial wealth, that's where it starts. And like he mentioned earlier, SP for a long term, start building that up, man. Yeah, start with that. That's real good. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna end the video there. If you want to watch the rest of the video, like I said, it's going to be in the description. I'm going to chop this up, so you're not going to see the full interview regardless. But he hit some pretty good points, and I think I covered some pretty good points there as well. So, key takeaways there. You got to start somewhere, man. Get out there, expose yourself to different things. And once you expose yourself to those different things, figure out if you like it or not. If you like it or not, go hard in the paint. Be consistent with it. Establish some good habits. Read some books. A good book that got me out of my bad habits was Make Your Bed. That being said, man, that's it, man. It's another deep take in the books.